everyone. This is your video for the analysis essay. So the analysis essay is a new essay. It's not related to any of our previous essays. And the basic requirements, 1,250 words minimum, typed double-spaced, 12-point Times New Roman font, MLA format. And on this one, you'll have one required source and you can choose one optional secondary source. What you'll be doing is analyzing an artifact from popular culture. And so the artifact has to be cited as a source in the text in a works cited page, and this is considered a primary source. And then you have the option of choosing one secondary source to support your analysis, as long as you don't rely on it too heavily. So like you can't adopt its claim as your own. It can only be used for support. And you don't have to use a secondary source at all. It's just there for you if you need to. So your task in this assignment is to take an artifact from popular culture and analyze it. Artifacts could include anything from movies, television, music, video games, internet memes, YouTube videos, books, art, etc. Okay, so, popular culture is basically, our sort of popular art forms. And so that can include any of these. But if there's something from that you think might work that's not on this list, go ahead and email me and just run it past me, and I'll let you know if it works. Choose something that interests you, not something that you think will please me. I don't have to write about it, and you do. So choose what you like. So you'll need an analytical claim. You'll write your essay on your artifact. So you'll start by making an analytical claim and then use observations and analysis that you've compiled to back up that claim. And you want to avoid obvious fact claims. So your claim can't be obvious. You want your analysis to be about your interpretation of the artifact and not just a repetition of the artifact's central message. So you can't just say, like, this movie is about, and then put the, main message of the movie. So, for instance, saying that The Shining is a movie about a man losing his mind because of a haunted hotel and trying to kill his family, that's not a good claim because it's just stating what the movie's about. It's just a statement of fact. You also shouldn't say something like, Rambo First Blood is about how hard it is for Vietnam veterans to cope with coming home to America that was hostile to them, because that's also just a statement of fact. So you don't want to go with the most obvious theme in your artifact. So, if it's too obvious, then it doesn't work as a claim. Okay, so it has to be something that people might disagree with, that they might have a different interpretation. In those two instances, there's no way that somebody's going to have a different interpretation. They're not going to be like, Rambo First Blood is actually just about, is not about. I don't see that. I don't see how it's about Vietnam vets, because it's very much about Vietnam vets. And so it's just a statement of fact. So you want to avoid stuff like that. A good claim test is, again, would any reasonable person who has seen or heard your artifact disagree with your claim? If the answer is yes, you have a good claim. If the answer is no, then your claim is no good. Your analytical claim is your interpretation of the artifact. You're trying to prove with evidence and reasoning that your interpretation is valid. Validity is what you're trying to prove, not necessarily to get people to change their minds about the artifact. You kind of want to just think about, what is what, if they look at it, can they go, okay, I can see that. Maybe I don't read it in the same way. Maybe I don't interpret it in the same way, but I can see that interpretation being made, and based on that evidence, right? So you're trying to get people to say more of that. And then, if you can get people to go, oh, I didn't see it that way, but that, I totally see it that way now. That's great. But mostly what you're trying to get them to say is like, oh yeah, I can see that. Maybe, whether I agree with that interpretation or not, based on that evidence, I can see where you're coming from. You also want to avoid evaluative claims. Those are claims that just say it's good or bad. You can talk about whether it's good or bad, but that can't just be your claim, okay? So, you can't just say, your claim can't be, this piece of art is really good, or this movie is really good. You have to, because that's an opinion that you can't back up necessarily with evidence. Because it's more of a personal opinion, than an interpretation. Okay? And those are two different things. Interpretations can be backed up with evidence. Just your personal feelings about it cannot. So, in terms of evidence, you'll need to back up your claim with specific evidence that you gather by observing your artifact. Your evidence will not come primarily from research, but from your own observations. Therefore, your evidence will need to be your descriptions of the artifact, including quotes if the artifact includes texts, detailed descriptions if it does not. If you decide to use a source for this paper, it has to be to back up your own argument, not to make your argument for you. Their claim should not be your claim, okay? And there are 3 kinds of evidence, and you should strive to use them all. So you can pull evidence from the artifact as a whole, the entire idea behind it, its overall message. But you also want to get into the specifics, so you can talk about the component parts. So if you remember in our song essay, we talked about what are the component parts of a song and how do you use that as evidence for an analytical claim. So you look at, what is this artifact made up of? So, for instance, a movie is made up of scenes, actors, sets, shots, etc. A song is made up of all the things we talked about. Video games are made up of levels, challenges, players, opponents, etc. Art is made up of color, medium, style, shapes, etc. So think about what are the component parts of your artifact and use that as evidence as well, but you also want to use very specific details, a small piece of the artifact, a specific scene or shot, a specific line or verse, a specific challenge or player, a specific shape or color, rather than just talking about in general, okay? So you want your evidence to go from general to a little more specific to a little more specific. Okay, so you want to get all the way down deep into those specific things. Whatever your evidence, it should be relevant to your claim. Your reader doesn't need to know every detail. You don't need to summarize every single detail of the artifact. You just need to pick the details that are relevant to your analytical claim, that prove your interpretation is valid. They only need to know about the ones that are relevant, because or they need to know details that they might need to know for context, but for the most part you want to stick to the details that are going to prove your claim, because you should assume that the reader, if they want to know a full summary of the artifact, then they'll go and observe it for themselves. They'll go and watch the movie or see the piece of art or whatever. And so you want to skip past going through every detail. And that's the biggest mistake that I see made on this kind of essay, is that you have people who are like, well, I got to describe every single detail. And then their paper just becomes a summary of whatever it is. And that's not analytical. That's informative. So you want to stay away from that. This assignment has a few fun alternatives. So if you wanted to, you could work with a partner, provided that each of you contribute roughly equally, or with a group of 3, provided that you write an additional page and that each of you contribute roughly equally. If you do either of those, make sure that you're working with someone that you really trust, okay, who's going to pull their weight and do the work. You can write 3 pages, or instead of 4. So like, sorry, I changed the, but you can, let's say you can chop off about 250 words. If there's some kind of additional related material of the writer's own creation, a presentation or demonstration video, a blog or website, a video, a political cartoon, a podcast episode, etc., as long as said material has been approved by me, so you'll need to send me an email. This has to be of your own creation. You can't just find a video or a blog or website. You have to create it, and then you can chop off 250 words, so that brings it down to 1,000 words. And I'll change that in this later. Sorry. You can also write 1,000 words instead of 1,250 if you create 3 annotated images, figures that point out specific evidence in the text. So you can have like figures where you're referencing in the text, look at figure A and see these 3 elements of whatever it is to demonstrate better what you're talking about. Okay, and you have to annotate those images or figures. So you have to say like, okay, like circle and a line that says, okay, this is, look at this, here's what this is. So you can also chop off 250 words, so write 1,000 words instead of 1,250. If you also create a video or audio file where you play specific evidence with your own voiceover commentary. So this works if you are doing a movie or a YouTube video or a song, and you basically do your own voiceover commentary where you're specifically pointing out specific things and talking about how they relate to your interpretation. You also can skip the essay altogether and record a multimedia presentation of no less than 8 minutes that utilizes the visual medium to the fullest advantage. So shows visuals to make a point. Visuals can be anything from pictures to very short video clips, side-by-side comparison, and is thoroughly engaging. So you can basically do a presentation, and you can use any kind of screencasting app that you want, and you basically do what I'm doing now, but with it like a PowerPoint or Google Slides, where you go over your analysis and your interpretation and your analytical claim and all of that. It still has to have all the same components, but you can do it in presentation form instead of essay form. So the presentation has to be visually engaging, not just words on a slide that you're reading to me, because I can read. Quotes, phrases, or keywords should be the most wording that you expect your audience to read. You should be saying most of it, okay? And you can use note cards. That's okay as long as you rehearse it first to make it sound not like you're just reading, okay? The presentation should have like an interactive element that encourages the audience to take part in the presentation. So you might stop and say, do this now, and then resume. And then you can use note cards, but you shouldn't read from a script. It should be rehearsed. Presentations will not be graded on speaking quality. While it would be good to avoid too many ums, uhs, and likes, the presentation will not be graded on your ability to speak well in front of an audience. And nervousness is normal and will not affect your grade. That said, try to speak clearly. Slowing down helps. I have trouble with that. If you have an idea about an alternative assignment that you would like to try that is not on this list, run it past me and I'll consider it. Some of these actually come from student suggestions. So, let me know if there's something you want to do that you don't see here. I might let you try it. I'll write up some guidelines. No big. So grading criteria is the same as always. So let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you all later. Make sure that you have your rough draft finished by next Tuesday, which is when the group conferences are going to be. So we'll do group conferences next Tuesday. So you'll need a draft. It can be very rough though. It doesn't have to be the full 1250 or even 1,000 words. It can be, around 750. And that's okay. All right. So just, and then, you'll spend the rest of the week working on it and turning it in, all next week. So, well, that's all I have for you today. I hope you guys have a good rest of your week and a good weekend, and I will see you next week for group conferences on our analysis essay. Thanks, guys. Bye.